What if I told you that some of the most celebrated acts of faith, the ones that get all the applause, are actually worthless in God's eyes? Today, we're going to dive into a pretty startling teaching from Jesus about something he called secret righteousness, a hidden kind of faith that he said is the only one that truly matters, especially as we get closer to the end of the age. So let's just start with a question that cuts right to the heart of everything. What if the most impressive, jaw-dropping acts of faith you've ever witnessed, the big public donations, the loud prayers, what if they're worth absolutely nothing in eternity? You see, Jesus gave this really chilling warning about this very thing. He talked about a religious performance that's all for show, designed just for human eyes. It's a faith that looks perfect on the outside but is totally bankrupt before the only audience that actually matters. And wow, in our age of performance, his warning has never been more relevant. Okay, to really get the weight of what Jesus was saying, it was a total bombshell. We need to step back into his world for a second. The culture he was speaking to was the complete opposite of what he was about to command. Picture this: first century Judea. This was a society that was just steeped in religion. Giving to the poor, what they called almsgiving, was considered one of the absolute highest virtues. Public acts of charity were celebrated. The most generous people were basically seen as community heroes, the most righteous people around. Everything was about the outward, visible display of holiness. And right into that culture, a world that idolized public goodness, Jesus drops this line. He says, be careful. He's not attacking the act of giving itself, he's going after the reason for giving. He is completely redefining righteousness from the inside out. And this is where Jesus presents a fork in the road. He lays out two totally different paths for a life of faith, and each one has a different audience in mind. The first one, well, it's the popular one, the well-traveled path of being seen by men. He describes people who make a huge spectacle of their giving, literally sounding a trumpet to announce their charity. Their motive is just painfully obvious, isn't it? They're desperate for the approval of the crowd. They want the honor. They want the reputation of being super holy. The entire act is just a transaction for human praise, not a real offering to God. And this leads to what might be one of the most bone-chilling statements in the entire Bible. Jesus looks at these performers and says, truly I say to you, they have their reward. It sounds so simple, but the finality of it, it's absolutely devastating. So what does he mean by that? He means that human praise is the only reward they will ever get. That round of applause, that little boost to their reputation, that's the entire payment. It's a temporary deal paid in full right here on earth. In God's eternal economy, their account is just empty. There's no credit, no record of it, no treasure stored up in heaven. The act was seen, sure, but the heart was hollow. But then Jesus pivots. He reveals the other path, the narrow, hidden path of righteousness that's focused on an audience of one, the path of being seen by God. He uses this incredibly poetic image. He says your giving should be so secret, your left hand shouldn't even know what your right hand is doing. Think about that. That's a level of secrecy so deep that not even your own ego can get a slice of the glory. It's an act purely 100% between you and God. And the contrast here, well, it couldn't be more stark. On one side, you've got public religion. The motive is to be seen by people, and the reward is temporary praise. On the other side, secret righteousness. The motive is to be seen by God, and the reward is eternal, heavenly treasure. The difference isn't small. It is literally everything. So here's the paradox in God's kingdom. Secrecy doesn't make an act less valuable. It proves its value. First, it proves it's authentic. You know it's the real deal, not just for show. Second, it purifies your motive, stripping away all the ego and just leaving a pure desire to please God. And third, this is the very thing that stores up real, lasting, unshakable treasure in heaven. And this is the central promise, the incredible hope in this whole teaching. Your Father who sees what you do in secret will one day reward you openly. That hidden act of love, that quiet sacrifice nobody knew about, it leads to a future public declaration of its worth from God himself in front of all creation. Now, you might be thinking this is just a good moral lesson from the ancient world, but it's so much more than that. Jesus connects this idea of secret righteousness directly to the end of the age. This is, in a very real way, an end times test. Jesus warned that the last days would be a time of massive religious spectacle and deception, a time when faith, for a lot of people, would just become a performance. But in the middle of all that noise and all those lights, He said true discipleship would stay what it's always been: hidden, costly, and deeply sincere. I mean, just think about our world today. In an age of social media where literally every act can be broadcast to the world, God still values secrecy. In a world obsessed with personal branding and image, he's still weighing the true motive of the heart. In a culture addicted to applause, he still honors the things that absolutely no one sees. And here's the best part. Jesus didn't just teach this, he lived it. He often healed people and then told them, hey, don't tell anyone about this. He would constantly pull away from the crowds that wanted to make him a celebrity. The king of the universe consistently chose the quiet path of hidden obedience over public glory. So all of this, it brings us down to a single piercing question. A question that cuts through all the noise and forces us to look past what other people see and to examine something much, much deeper. And for every single believer out there, this teaching holds such a beautiful hope. It means that no hidden act of faith is ever wasted. Your private prayers, whispered when nobody's around, they are known. Your quiet acts of generosity, done with no fanfare, they are remembered. Every secret sacrifice you make out of love for God is recorded in heaven. Absolutely nothing gets lost, because the Father sees in secret. And one day, at the great revealing, Christ is going to bring all of it into the light. He will openly declare and reward every single thing that was done in hidden love for him. So the final, penetrating question Jesus leaves us with is not, do people see your faith, but something much deeper. Does God see your heart? Because in the coming kingdom, the greatest honors just might be reserved for the very people that no one on earth ever even noticed.